try to have a discussion about Israel. We'll see if it turns into a debate. But it's two guys who know and like each other. Jake Turks is the senior White House correspondent for Ami magazine. And Jake and I have talked in the past before about different issues. We're going to talk about Israel here and see if we can come to a meeting of the minds or not. But either way, you'll get both sides. Jake, welcome back.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but you actually had my back in previous years when Trump went after me. So I want to thank you for that. And yeah, I discovered your show back in, I would say, it's got to have been 04, 05. I think when you're still like back on satellite radio or Air America, whichever was first. And the reason I was looking for a show like yours, and I stopped at your show, I didn't feel like I needed any other show, is because at the time I was very outspoken against the war in Iraq. And I couldn't find a show that I felt comfortable with that wasn't pushing a corporate agenda. And your show really appealed to me back then. And over the years, there've been things that I've loved about you guys. There've been things that I didn't always agree on, but I always find myself coming back. So, and thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
No problem, Jake, and thanks for saying that. And it's funny you mentioned that because I was just talking to Edwin. He was part of the crew here, and he was saying, "Hey, don't be too tough on supporters of the current Israeli government, because a lot of folks, like including he said himself, didn't know about the Iraq war. You mentioned the Iraq war, that Iraq had not attacked us, and for 3 years he said that he didn't know the full story. And so let's have a discussion. Let's suss it out so that people can know more, right? And I think that's right. So let's do that about Israel.
Sure.
So Jake, as I look at it, I view myself in using the Iraq war as an analogy again, like kind of like France was with America, or I was, and the Young Turks were with America in the Iraq war. We didn't say don't go into the Iraq war, and France didn't say that as an ally because they hated America. They said it because they wanted to help America. They wanted to drag us out of a bar fight we shouldn't be in. And again, our show, I hope, did the same thing for the American government, even though we love America. That wasn't trying to hurt them. So in the case, when I see Israel doing what it's doing, 32,000 dead, 23,000 women and children, 1.1 million on the brink of famine, it's not just to save the Palestinian lives, but it's also to help Israel. What are you doing? What are you doing? Get out of there, get out of there. You're killing yourself, and then you're getting the world to hate you. So do you see that perspective, and are you worried about something similar or no?
Was it Golda Meir who said something to the effect of, the one thing I cannot forgive them for is turning our people into killers? I'm paraphrasing, and I think it was Golda Meir. Yeah, I don't think any of us want this war. I don't think any of us are happy with the fact that it needs to be fought. I personally don't know anyone who's rooting for this war to prolong 1 second later than it needs to. At the same time, there is this understanding in Israel that you got to finish the job, otherwise it's just going to come back. You can't put out 75% of a fire and just shrug and say, okay, I'll call it a day. So that's the sentiment on the ground. And I know a lot of people have shifted their position. People who supported Israel in the beginning are no longer supportive, and I know you're one of them. You know, for the first few weeks, you defended Israel's right to defend itself. You called out Hamas. I think I stopped counting at about 174 times. You called them out in using language that I would not use in front of my mother. So, and she's probably watching this, so hi, Mom. And you definitely have been very, very consistent on that. And then all that changed. So I want to kind of ask you the question, can you pinpoint the moment that Israel lost you as a supporter?
Yes and no. So do I remember an exact minute or instance? No. But do I know generally the time zone? Yeah. So in October 7th, I'm with Israel. It's a terrible, barbaric attack. It's dumb, counterproductive, immoral. And as Jake has pointed out, I've said everything in the world against the Hamas attack on October 7th. And I was asked early on, what do you think that Israel should do? Should defend itself? How? And I said special forces and it's going to be really tough, and they're going to lose a lot of people, but they should go inside the tunnels because that's where Hamas is. Aerial bombing doesn't make any sense. You could be killing the hostages. You're certainly killing innocent civilians, and I'm not morally okay with that, etc. But Jake, when I started reading about the 2,000-pound bombs that they were dropping, that is so indiscriminate. And then the more we found out, the worse and worse and worse it got. And it looked like right now they're -1 on hostages. So the only time they got any hostages back was through a ceasefire, which is what we've been advocating for. In the midst of the fighting, I think that they've recovered 3 hostages and killed 4 that we know of. So I was like, wait a minute, it doesn't even look like they're trying to get the hostages. And I'm not sure they're even trying to get Hamas. But I know what they are doing, they're leveling Gaza. And so once I sensed that it was pretty close to indiscriminate and that they were trying to hurt the people of Gaza rather than Hamas, I was out. And I've been vehemently against it ever since.
Okay, so I have a theory that just going through your Twitter. The first time that you tweeted very decisively against Israel, and then from there, all of your tweets kind of reflect that direction. And I'm not judging you based on this tweet. I want you to understand where I'm coming from. It's just to raise a certain awareness of it. You said Israel bombed the hospital, killing 300 to 500 civilians inside. Obviously, you first of all, I respect you that you kept the tweet up and that you also posted afterwards a retraction because we had found out within a few hours of the story happening that it was not all like that. That it was an errant PIJ rocket that landed in the parking lot. That the Al-Afli hospital, I believe, is up and running at least in a limited capacity even today. So that hospital was never leveled. But from there on out, you took a very strong anti-Israel approach. You started citing the number of the Hamas Ministry of Health, the number of 3,000 dead, 5,000 dead, and then you the critique never let down from there. So first, do you reject anything that I said just now? Is there anything that I was off on?
So I would object to 2 things that you kind of said in there, but overall not too much. So whether that hospital strike was Israel, Islamic Jihad, or whatever, it's important to get every single situation correct and factual. But at the same time, it's a dot in a giant picture of carnage all over Gaza. So to point to one hospital bombing that either happened or didn't happen is now so wildly irrelevant after so many hospitals, schools, universities, ambulances, civilians, everything you could imagine has been killed now. So that maybe it was a tipping point of some sort, but it was a tipping point that had so many points along with it that the context is what drove me in that direction. And and I gotta say to supporters of Israel, when you guys keep calling it the Hamas Ministry of Health, you're accidentally doing an ad for Hamas because they have almost never been wrong about the numbers. They're verified by human rights groups and mainstream media outlets, whereas the IDF has been wrong so often that it's nearly every time. So I don't think you're doing Israel any favors by saying Hamas Ministry of Health, because they seem like the good guys now, the Ministry of Health, not Hamas.
Okay, so here's where I'm kind of going with all this. When Hamas looks at someone like yourself, you have over 5 million subscribers, very compassionate individual, and they see that you, just from one report, so they claim 471 people were killed at that hospital strike. When they see that all they need to do is put out a statement, and then that's enough to have people like you publicly turn on Israel, why wouldn't they keep on engaging in these kinds of misinformation wars.
But
When
brother,
they say
so two
the
things
work,
about
the
that.
work.
So two things
I'm
about that,
sorry?
Jake.
Yeah.
So first of all, as opposed to the Ministry of Health, which is an actual Ministry of Health that tries to help in Gaza, Hamas's political and military wing, I don't trust at all. And so when they put out a statement, I view it just as incredulous as I am these days about the IDF statements. I dismiss both of them and I try to get to what's actually true, right? So they're not. It's not like they're going to deceive me overall, and that they've deceived the whole world. And 32,000 people aren't actually dead. They are, let alone the 10,000 missing and the 70,000 wounded.
How do you know? How do you know the number is much higher or much lower?
Well, I know that it could be much higher because of the reporting, and there isn't a single news outlet that thinks that it's lower. So, I mean. Again, Jake, you don't help the cause by seemingly, like, if you're on that side, seemingly denying reality, because then people go, okay, well then I can't talk to this person. I mean, they're telling me that every single news organization and every single human rights group is wrong.
No, but you just said you don't trust Hamas, and I said, well, what about their casualty numbers? And you're like, well, everyone accepts that. Why?
Yeah, because it's not coming from Hamas's political wing. It's coming from the Ministry of Health, and it's been verified. So it's not.
I get that the Ministry of Health oversees, like, I don't know what kind of equipment and instruments to have available which hospital, but they don't control the messaging. They can't put. I mean, earlier in the conflict, they put out a tweet that was critical of Hamas, and then within a very short time, they were forced to remove it.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all, Jake. But Jake, if the Ministry of Health kept putting out numbers, and then The Guardian, The Intercept, The New York Times, The Washington Post, the UN were saying nonsense, those numbers aren't true at all, then I would say then they're not true. And so why would I want to go down a path that isn't true? Right? So, but when every one of those guys go, yeah, we verified it, those are roughly the right numbers.
They don't have better numbers, and they can't prove that these numbers aren't. I mean, what are they going to say? They'll say, no, we have better numbers. Like they'll accept what it is that they're being given, and they'll put that as a caveat. But given enough time, everyone starts repeating those numbers. That doesn't make it accurate. Like I said, it could be way higher, it could be way lower. I guess that's why that number is a good average, somewhere in between. So that works. But otherwise, like, a lot of the premise is based off of those numbers, right?
Yeah, but Jake, so here's the thing. The numbers are terrible for Israel. And I mean, 99 journalists killed, worse than any conflict since 1992, 196 humanitarian workers killed. That's 3 times worse than any conflict in the world at the same time, including the Russia-Ukraine situation. I mean, these are just horrific numbers. But put the numbers aside, Jake, if you go to the core moral issue of someone killed my family members, I loathe them and I want revenge badly. And yeah, I would want revenge, okay? And that doesn't make me a good person, but it is what it is. So I relate to that and I empathize with that. But if you said to me that culprit, or let's say there's 2, 3, 4 of them, right? The 4 of them are in that hospital, school, or just random building. And if you bomb it, you're gonna kill 40 civilians and those 4. There's no way in the world I would bomb that building. Okay, let's reduce the numbers. 4 innocent people and the 4 guilty people. There's no way in the world I would bomb that building. So whereas Israel is saying, yeah, I mean, even today with the food workers, they said, yeah, we thought there was a Palestinian terrorist in that convoy, so we killed them all. That is so deeply immoral. I can't believe they're saying that out loud. What am I missing there?
No, I mean, look, a lot of these aid workers, they left their families, they left their communities, they went to the most dangerous place in the world, essentially, because because of their generous nature and their benevolence, and it makes it especially more heartbreaking that these people are being caught up in this conflict. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm not on board for hey, it's, we killed 2 civilians for every 1 terrorist. That's the claim of, is it even, no, they're saying 9,000 terrorists, which is absurd. That's all the males that they've killed in Gaza.
Haaretz might be working on old data because I thought the number was 13 to 14,000. That the idea.
Yeah, Haaretz just.
I'm aware of the article you're referring to.
Yeah, Haaretz just said Israel has changed the number. First of all, when you change it from 12,000 to 9,000 terrorists that you killed, you lose all credibility. Okay, why did you say 12,000 when it clearly wasn't 12,000? And 9,000 is about the number of males they've killed. So every single male in Gaza was a terrorist that you killed? No one believes that.
No, the opposite. The opposite. If I'm wrong, I'll own up to it. I think it's actually admirable. If they're backtracking on their number and they're saying, actually, no, we overestimated.
I hear you on
kind of shows their commitment to trying to get it right.
Yeah, so Jake, that's a fair point actually. And I want people to understand that.
To say those are all the males, that is relying on the Hamas data that and their gender breakdowns. But a very uncomfortable thing to consider is how many 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old teens are engaging in military activity that's then, as far as the numbers go, these guys are counted as children, but as far as Israel's numbers go, these guys are considered combatants, right?
So Jake, it's not
possible.
Yeah.
It's possible that a percentage of what is considered children on the Hamas number, let's assume both numbers are accurate. A percentage of numbers on the Hamas roster would be considered terrorists on the Israeli roster. A number of the children would be considered combatants on the Israeli side.
Yeah, that's a terrible argument. I hear what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to acknowledge something that nobody else acknowledged. Like, I get that a 16-year-old can throw a rock. I get that a 16-year-old can join.
That's why they're being arrested in the West Bank.
Okay, hold on. I get that even a 16-year-old could even join a militant group. I understand that. Having said that, you're going to hate this analogy, but pick any analogy you like. But if a 16-year-old Jewish kid that was forced into a ghetto or a concentration camp fought back against the Germans, and then the Germans said we had a right to defend ourselves, so we killed that kid, I would say that's a kid. I wouldn't say, oh, well, he is an adult. I can't believe that son of a bitch tried to fight against the Germans. Now, so you're gonna hate that analogy because it compares Israel to the Germans.
No, it's a fair analogy. It's a fair analogy. It would be an even more fair analogy if that Jewish child was targeting or murdering German children. But if the child's taking up arms and the Nazi says, hey, I'll just do it in self-defense, I understand why you see it that way. But the Israelis are just trying to defend themselves against these incessant attacks. The rocket fire still hasn't stopped. It's not like Israel could just turn around and say, fine, we're done, we're bored, let's go home. They can't even do that because their civilian centers are still being attacked. It's a very complex situation.
Yeah, so Jake, I actually think they can. So let's talk about the potential solution. So far, 75 years of occupation has brought 75 years of conflict. Okay, the legendary case of peace is actually right here on Israel and Egypt. So they do a peace deal, the Camp David Accords. That peace deal works brilliantly, beautifully, brings Israel peace, brings Egypt peace. Not a rocket has been fired since. So we know definitively, it doesn't mean it happens in every instance. But in the case of Israel, they have gotten to peace with their top enemy. Egypt was 10,000 times stronger than Hamas, right? And at the time, there was a real chance that Egypt could unite all the Arab armies against Israel, and they did in a war, and that they could do it again and maybe even win. So the fact that they made a peace deal with an enemy that was much larger, stronger, and more of an existential threat, and it worked, is a great example for peace working. Now, so we have definitively conflict has led to more conflict, peace has led to more peace. So I would argue if you go into Rafah and you kill way more civilians as you're trying to get to a couple of the Hamas guys, you're gonna do much more damage to Israel and the Palestinians and the cause for a safe haven for Jews than if you stop right now I mean, Jesus, so far it's been 1,200 to 32,000. You could dispute the numbers around the edges, but still, bottom line is everybody knows Israel's killed at least 30 times what Hamas has killed. And so, and then you got to actually a peace deal with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and did a two-state solution. You would be infinitely safer in Israel. Can you not see that?
Yeah, I think Israel has proven itself over the decades, its commitment to peace. How do you make peace with a group that vows to wipe you off the map?
Easy.
And continues to do so even now, even when they've been decimated, just in terms of territory and in their ranks, if you accept the Israeli numbers that their battalions have been reduced from 24 down to 4. And yet they're still threatening to carry out additional 7 style attacks. How do you? Egypt wasn't threatening to do that. Egypt.
Oh yeah, it was.
A, B. Egypt was brought to its knees. Egypt surrendered. They realized that they had no reason to continue fighting. At what point is the onus on Hamas and the Palestinians that they should be the ones requesting peace, even if it's not what they had in mind? But maybe the time has come that they should just move on and try something different, maybe something less violent. I don't know.
No, but Jake, they've tried that 100 times as well. Let's keep it real. So let me do. Yeah, they have. So I'll explain. I'll explain. So
what did they offer? All the Hamas's position has never changed. They want 100% of the territory. When have they ever conceded anything?
Yeah. So first of all, again, you have to separate out Hamas and the Palestinians. So let's take it one at a time. Let me do it as quickly as I can. So number one on Egypt. Egypt and Israel were two separate countries. They're fighting. Egypt loses, but they don't lose Egypt. If Israel had gone and occupied all of Egypt, then Egypt would have never stopped fighting because they would want their land back. They would want their country back. But Egyptians are not Palestinians. So basically what the Egyptians did was, hey, Palestinians, good luck to you, but we're outie, okay? And so now overall it brought peace to a lot of people, so I'm definitely in favor of it, but they left the Palestinians behind. And so now the reason why the Palestinians aren't ever going to stop is because no people would ever stop. I mean, Jake, if you pick, let's not go to Germany, let's pick a different country, any country, it doesn't matter. So if the Netherlands was occupying Israel for the last 75 years, and you couldn't control your own borders, your own water, your own electricity, and every once in a while they'd come and bomb you and kill you and subjugate you and humiliate you, would the Jews have the right to fight back? Goddamn right they would, right? And so, and if you said to the Jews, no, just be good boys and girls and accept your occupation for however long we want to occupy you, and then maybe we'll get to peace, you wouldn't accept that and you shouldn't accept that. That's crazy to accept that. So have the Palestinians tried for peace in different ways before? Of course, look, there's 100 examples, but the one that always sticks with me is when Mahmoud Abbas and Palestinian Authority made a real effort to try to go get the UN to declare Palestine a state, just like they did for Israel. And Israel said, unacceptable, borderline terrorism. What the? Wait a minute, if that's terrorism, then everything is terrorism. So they've tried.
I'm proud of you, Cenk. I'm proud of you. That must have, you really wanted to go all over this. I saw.
But I demonstrated it. Okay, so, yeah. But you see, so that was a diplomatic route. And I remember saying at the time on the show, perfect. Go to the diplomatic route, don't go the violent route. The violent route loses you support in the world, makes your chance of getting a Palestinian state harder, not easier. But I would say the same thing to Israel today. Go the diplomatic route, especially when you're so much more powerful than the Palestinians. Okay, whereas if you go the violence route and the war route and the conflict route, you've lost the whole world. So Jake, I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I gotta ask you this, do you not see the world slipping away and turning on Israel? You gotta see that, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, that happened a while ago. That happened way before this conflict.
I don't think so.
On October 7th itself, there were already protests all over the world against Israel before Israel even had a chance to respond. This was well coordinated. No, to your point, I mean, it sucks not to be loved. It really does. And it's also not good for business. I think the Israelis don't see any other choice. The choice is either be loved and be dead, or be hated and do what you think you got to do to make sure this stuff. I'm not justifying anything. I'm not saying I can do anything better or different. I would be curious to hear how you would have responded, not what you would do today, but how you would have responded at the time to ensure that your base instincts don't take control of you, and that you don't react in an over-the-top way.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, let's role play, okay? You're the president of the United States. It could happen one day. I'm the prime minister of Israel. I'm waiting. This is your 3 a.m. phone call. Cenk, we've been attacked. It's terrible. Hundreds dead. I don't have a lot of details. What am I doing? Go ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, obviously use Iron Dome and make sure you protect your people if there's more incoming rockets. And America gave Iron Dome to Israel, and I was massively in favor of that because it protects civilian lives. Number two, you're gonna wanna go get the guys who did it, and you're gonna wanna find the hostages. Number one, you should be using your special forces. Number two, is there anything we could do logistically with satellites, any kind of information we can get you so you can find where the hostages are and you can find where the Hamas fighters are? If you then say to me, yeah, I'm gonna start dropping 2,000-pound bombs in the middle of their cities, I would have said, whoa, don't do that. Don't do that. Number one, it's immoral and wrong, but number two, that's gonna hurt you, let alone them, because then you're gonna lose the moral high ground that you're on, and I don't want you to lose the moral high ground you're on. And
okay, so let's say I'm not going to 2,000-pound bombs yet. First, I'm saying, how are these special operations supposed to work? They have 40,000 armed combatants according to our numbers, and like, how are we getting a team of special forces past 40,000 armed soldiers in unfamiliar territory? Like, how are we supposed to pull that off?
Yeah, first of all, Israel's military is much larger, intensely better equipped, and has every tactical advantage you could possibly imagine, other than the fact that it's not even unfamiliar territory. Mossad has all of Gaza mapped out. And in fact, Ehud Barak said they built the tunnels in the first place. So, I'm shocked that he said that. And I don't know that he built all the tunnels, but he did say it. I saw it with my own eyes. So they kind of know where the tunnels are. They know the lay of the land. But yes, it is very difficult to fight Hamas inside the tunnels and even inside Gaza. But brother, that's what special forces are for. That's what the military's for. And it doesn't take courage to throw a punch, it takes courage to take a punch. So Israel took a significant punch. If they punched back, but in a precise way, and then they rescued some hostages and got the bad guys, then my God, the whole world would have been so much more sympathetic than just leveling the whole place. I mean, do you see that? Can you acknowledge that?
What I think an Israeli president that I'm trying to role play as prime minister would respond and say, listen, I know these people. If I don't respond very forcefully, they're going to take it. They're going to attribute it as a sign of weakness on my part, and they're going to take full advantage. I cannot take that chance.
Yeah, nonsense. So Jake, those are the two fallacies that I want to focus on here as we get closer to wrapping up. So you said, yes, I'd rather be, safe and alive, especially for my family and loved ones, than be loved, right? But that's a false choice. So constantly attacking Hamas to the point of killing an enormous number of civilians, no matter how you count. Now an enormous number of aid workers, and now 1.1 million people on the verge of starvation, etc. All of this doesn't make you safer. All it does is prolong the hatred, the conflict, and the not just the world turning on you, but you're destroying your own moral core. I fought against the Iraq war not because I hated America, but because I loved America, and I didn't want us to be the immoral force in the world that attacks random countries that didn't attack them. And God damn, we lost nearly 1 million people in Iraq. Not we as in America, but we as in the world, right? So that didn't make America safer. It made America less safe. Same exact thing for Israel. You're not trading being loved for safety. You're not getting the safety. You're losing both. And then the second fallacy is, Jake, I'm not Jewish, so I talk to non-Jews all the time, and they tell me what they really think, okay? And so do I know that anti-Semitism is real? Yes, it's definitely real, okay? The number one trope there is, and I don't know if Jewish folks know this or not, but number one trope is Jews control the world, okay? That's what non-Jews really believe. All of them, of course not. A lot of them, yes, okay? But did they all hate Israel, or did they all hate Jews before this? No, they had mixed feelings. Even in the crazy anti-Semitic trope guys, they didn't necessarily hate Israel. They didn't necessarily even hate Jews. Even though it sounds like, well, if they're anti-Semitic, they must hate Jews. No, people are way more complicated than that. But now, after what's happened in Gaza, oh no, like forget the guys who had believed in anti-Semitic tropes. You've lost Europe, you've lost Asia, you've lost everyone who's got eyes. We see the kids starving to death and getting amputated and wondering where their legs are. It's a disaster for Israel. Again, can you not see that?
No, of course I see that. Of course I see that. And this, the way I see it, is this is exactly what Hamas wanted. Hamas
why did you give it to them? Like, do you see how you fall into that trap if you're Israel?
No, of course. But Israel says, look, we don't have a choice. We got to get rid of these 40,000. How do you get rid of the 40,000, and maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but this is their estimate, 40,000 armed combatants. How do you get rid of them without going in block by block, building by building, tunnel by tunnel, begging civilians a few weeks in advance to get out of there? And sometimes mistakes happen, and sometimes someone's trigger happy, and sometimes they have bad intelligence, and sometimes there's a fog of war, and sometimes the Palestinians just make stuff up because they're bored, they have cameras, they have all day, they have no jobs to go to, and they have these beautiful.
Yeah, because you destroyed all of Gaza, Jake. That's why they have no jobs.
Indeed, but you know what? I've seen some of the footage, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And I see my own children's faces on the faces of these suffering Palestinian children, and I like in a very minute way try to feel what they're feeling. But then quite often we'll also see footage that is very obviously fake. And if there are so many tens of thousands of dead children, why do they have to fake these shots? It just makes it harder for me to look at it and take it seriously. It makes it harder for me to know what's real and what's not. And so I'm very cautious about any footage of any children starving or anything like that. And again, I'm not saying that, first of all, let's not discount, I mean, how many people were killed by misfired rockets? I mean, it's a very densely populated area. How many people died of natural causes? How many people died because they were executed by Hamas? How many people died because they were just they were caught up in fighting between two clans? I mean, there are endless reasons why people died, but every single death is going to be attributed to Israel, and there is no one on the ground who is going to say otherwise. So yes, it looks terrible for Israel. It's definitely terrible for the Palestinian civilians, and Hamas is laughing at how easy it was for them to get Israel to be in this position where people are being killed. One of the big challenges, by the way, is when Israel issues the warning, please evacuate this building, we're going to bomb it in a few hours, Hamas positioned itself outside the building and threatens to shoot anybody who tries to leave. This has been well documented. Not well enough that, I mean, you probably didn't come across it. I can send you some links afterwards. But they're doing whatever they can to ensure as many casualties as possible. Israel is trying to give warnings when they're able to, which is more often than not. They're not always going to be able to issue warnings. And sometimes the terrorists will deliberately embed themselves where they know the civilians are. Yeah. The Al-Mawasi, I don't know what you call it, that little strip in the along the beach that Israel originally told everyone to relocate to. Terrorists fired rockets deliberately from there, hoping to elicit airstrikes, and they were successful. Israel did respond.
So Jake, I don't mean this as an insult since I'm a Turk, but you sound like a Turk. And here's what I mean by that. So
wait, you tell me what you mean, and then I'll tell you what that expression means in Yiddish.
oh,
Because
that's interesting.
it might mean something. There is actually an expression, yes.
I
But
didn't know
go
that.
ahead, you tell me first.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I got propaganda from the Turkish side and believed that the Armenian genocide didn't really happen and it was exaggerated, right? And then when I realized the reality and I turned and I said, no, the Armenian genocide did happen, Turks, including people who were very close to me, were outraged. And they thought it was so immoral to recognize the genocide. And what they would tell me all the time is, are you crazy? You know that the numbers aren't what they say they are. And you know that some of the stuff was totally faked. And the stuff about the bayonets is fake, and this is fake, and that's fake. And did you know this, and did you know that? Yeah, but you're missing the forest for the trees. Yeah, maybe some of that stuff the Turkish folks say is true, and maybe some of what you're saying is right around the edges. But brother, we see Israel leveling the place and killing their own hostages and having kill zones where they kill everyone that's in the zone. We see them killing the aid workers. We see them killing the reporter after reporter after reporter. If the reporters are on your side, why are you killing them? And we can go on, and you can argue around the edges. But the central point is, you keep saying Hamas is making Israel doing this. No, Hamas is not making Israel do anything. Israel does have a choice. And you could choose not to fall into Hamas's trap. If you think Hamas is trying to trick you into killing Palestinian civilians, well then don't get tricked and don't kill those civilians and be bigger and better than that. If you make a peace deal now, you could turn this whole thing around if you're Israel. And you can go from, yes, that was terrible and horrible, but it was necessary, you could even argue. I wouldn't agree, but you could argue that. But as long as you get to a two-state solution, and then we were magnanimous and we did this two-state solution. And by the way, if at that point, Hamas or any other Palestinian is still firing rockets, the world's on your side and against them. And besides which, your military is 200,000 times stronger than their military. Takes courage to take a punch and not throw a punch. So look, and finally, the core thing here, Jake, is that Hamas, you say, wants to wipe us out, and hence we cannot do anything until we wipe them out. That is a perfect recipe for endless war. Yeah, of course, the Greeks wanted to wipe out the Turks wanted to wipe out the Greeks. And so what, we were never supposed to get the peace? In fact, after World War I, Greece invaded what was left of Turkey and was going to wipe out the Turks, at least in our minds. And they invaded, and then they killed a lot of people. So in reality as well. Does that mean we should still be fighting with the Greeks because they were trying to kill us all? No, they were trying to kill us all because we were at war. Okay, fine, now let's get to peace. The answer is definitively peace. You're never going to be able to wipe out all of Hamas and then magically have a utopia because you killed all the other guys. That's not a thing that ever happens. You get the peace by doing peace.
Okay, and listen, I wish it was that simple. I'd like to understand a little bit better how you would envision these negotiations between Israel and Hamas playing out. But first,
no, it wouldn't be Hamas. I would do the negotiations with Palestinian Authority and then get the two-state solution and have the Palestinian Authority drive out Hamas from Gaza. Because at that point, they would have the credibility of having delivered a Palestinian state.
And how's the PA getting rid of Hamas exactly?
They would come in with cops, and at that point, Palestine would exist, and they would build a military, and it would be their job to police Hamas.
And they have a stronger military than, I mean, if Israel's military isn't able to dislodge Hamas, don't you think a Palestinian military would not?
Yeah, but there's a giant, so Jake, good point, but there's a giant difference.
In the process.
So giant difference, Jake, which is a bunch of differences actually. Number one, the Palestinians aren't rooting for Israel. There's no scenario in which they're going to be like, oh yes, the occupiers. Oh, thank God you're here to bomb us again. Oh, we're so mad at Hamas. That's not a realistic expectation, right? But on the other hand, if the Palestinian Authority, who are also Palestinians, just got them a Palestinian state, and then Hamas says, no, let's go back to war. Yeah, I could definitely envision Palestinians going, no, I don't want to go back to war. We just got a state. No, I'm with the guys who delivered us the state, not the guys who want to have endless conflict and go back to getting slaughtered.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is Hamas would say, are you with the guys who got us a state on only 20% of what they claim is our historical land? Or do you want a guy who's going to fight for 100% of all the land? And they'll have everybody's support, because anyone who doesn't support them gets executed. But no. I told you I would tell you what the Yiddish expression for talking like a Turk is. So this goes back to pre-mandate Palestine, when Palestine as a territory was controlled by the Ottomans. And there was this expression that when someone was saying something nonsensical, you would say, and I'm going to say it in Yiddish, then I'll translate. They would say, "Azoy vi a shikere Turk," which means like a drunken Turk.
That sounds about right so far.
Okay, what that means is, because like the Turkish soldiers stationed in Israel, for the most part, did not speak Hebrew, and the Jews there, for the most part, did not speak Turkish. So when a Turkish soldier was trying to communicate with a Jew, there was this language barrier. So the difference is that a drunken Turk, I don't understand what the guy is saying, and he doesn't know what he's talking about either. That's what the expression is, that neither of us know what we're talking about. And I'm not saying this against you personally or in the spirit of this conversation. Even I'm just telling you what it's interesting that we both have very similar expressions. And in defense of your people, look, there isn't a lot of documentation of what happened in World War I between the Ottoman Empire and the Armenians. It's clear that the Armenian people suffered tremendously, to the extent that there's still land that the Turkish government today has refused to give back to Armenian families, land that had been taken away during that very, very sad episode. So it's more than just, is it a genocide or not? There are real life implications that and grievances that have never been settled from. I mean, we're talking about over 100 years already.
Yeah, but see, I keep saying we're going to end it, but I keep saying one more thing. But Jake, that's such a great example.
Hey, I'm loving it too, by the way. Yeah. Not just you.
Yeah. So that's a great example for two different reasons. Let me run this by you, and then we'll see if we can wrap up.
On the show, Jake and Jake, you know.
Yeah. So, look, in a sense, the Turks and the Israelis can relate because we're both occupiers. Keeping it real, okay? Whether you think the occupation was justified or not justified, it is an occupation. And when we occupied Armenian lands, Greek lands, Bulgarian lands, Egyptian lands, we also occupied Palestine, right? So we've been there. Well, yeah, that was back in the day when people had empires, and there was very different rules back then, right? But in today's world, would it be right to try to go back to that world? No. Occupying those people is a terrible idea. And if Turkey was still trying to do that, Turkey would be embroiled in endless war. Instead, we found a way to get a republic and let everything else go that what basically, quote unquote, wasn't ours. And that wound up a lot better, okay? And in fact, that leads to the second thing. Turkey invades Cyprus, takes the whole island, but gives 60% of it back to the Greeks, because the Greeks were about 60% of the population. They build a wall, and to your point, Jake, Greeks still complain, no, my house is over there, the goddamn Turks, they took my house, and they took my land, and it was so unfair, and they shouldn't have built this wall, and blah, blah, blah. Yes, but no Greeks and no Turks have been killed in about half a century because they gave back 60% of the land and built a wall.
That's the difference. If Israel could come up with some kind of an agreement similar to the one that Turkey came up with Greece, then we wouldn't be talking. In fact, I don't know what either of us would be doing professionally. We would have literally nothing to talk about. And
There's many other things in the world. Oh my God, it would be a dream to get to peace in the Middle East, then we could talk about other things. But Jake, the other way that you enforce the, drive out Hamas is, remember, if there's gonna be a peace deal, basically all the Arab countries have to agree to it. So then all the Arab countries then flip against Hamas if they persist. and on the side of the Palestinian Authority, including money, et cetera, et cetera. Now you could say, hey, maybe some of them will violate that agreement, but I would much rather have a pretty good peace agreement that the Arab countries are trying to help Israel implement, rather than no peace agreement and endless war.
But that's not realistic, because look at the entire world putting pressure on Israel, and yet Israel doesn't care because they believe that their existence is at stake. Hamas believes that they need to have 100% of what they consider to be historical Palestine, which I'm assuming also includes Jordan, and they're not backing down from that. They haven't yet, and they don't seem to be. So even if the entire Arab world turns on them, they're not gonna give up.
Yeah, that's okay. We could drive them out. Look, I guarantee you I could find you a whole heap of Greeks who say that we should. No, but Jake, look, here's the thing. I guarantee you that I could find you a whole heap of Greeks who say we should have 100% of Turkey. And by the way, it is kind of their ancestral homeland. A lot of it is. So they're not entirely wrong historically, right? And I can find you a lot of Turks who say, what do you mean? We had Greece for 500 years. That's our land. We should get that. So what? So what that there's people who say, no, that's all of our land and we're gonna keep fighting. Our job is to get past those people. And what I'm saying, Jake, is if you go into Rafah and whenever I say you in this context, of course I mean Israel.
Yeah, I'm American. Let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah, 100%. That's right. And when I say I'm a Turk,
but I just want to say I love Israel, and my heart breaks for the Palestinian people. I mean, they haven't had a good day in 75 years.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I think it's more their fault than anyone else's. But anyway,
okay. You almost had me. Okay. Anyways, look, we can keep going and going. I'll even drop that earlier point. All I'll say is, imagine the day when you get to a workable peace plan. Not only will Israel finally become a safe haven for Jews, and maybe it takes a couple more years after that. Maybe they fire some more rockets. Maybe it takes a while to drive Hamas out, even if the whole Arab world, Palestinian Authority, etc. Okay, but at least on that day, you're on the road to making Israel a safe haven. And both the Palestinians and the Israelis on that day would be considered heroes by the whole world. Jake, we've got to be going towards that day, and not a day where, like every other day, where we're at endless war, endless civilian casualties, endless hatred of Israel because everyone on their TV screens sees dead babies. So we got to get past it, not just for the Palestinians, but for Israel's sake. I'm gonna leave it there.
Peace is something that the Jewish people pray for 3 times a day. I mean, more than just 3 times a day, but at the very minimum 3 times a day. It's something that is at the forefront of our minds. That this is how we greet people. This is how we say farewell to people. It is all about peace, and it is a very elusive and very challenging thing to get to. And hopefully, our generation will be worthy of a lasting peace that we will be able to be proud of. And if this is something that we're able to achieve, then we are, Cenk, you and I, we are going to have a really, really memorable celebration once that happens. And
then,
may it be speedily in our days.
That sounds like an awesome day, brother. So since we're young Turks and you're Jake Turks, we'll be two drunken Turks together and finally understanding each other.
Yes, and that will both feel young as well, and that'll be beautiful.
All right, there you go. All right, Jake Turks, senior White House correspondent for Ami Magazine. Thank you for joining us and having an intelligent, thoughtful, decent, moral conversation. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, which, I knew we would have. It's not like I'm even surprised by this. This is, we care deeply about this topic, and if we care deeply about it, then we should care enough to try to get to the bottom of it.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for helping with that, Jake. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.